Let's go mushroom hunting. I just finished up a kind of walk around the homestead and look at projects type of a video. And I was actually playing hooky from working on my roof. And then I got back and I climbed up the ladder and I looked at the roof and I'm like, no, that ship sailed. The sun's going down. So I'm going to go mushroom hunting because the rule of thumb that I go by is 2 weeks after the first rains, I look for oyster mushrooms. If there's going to be anything out, there's a good chance it's at least sprouting already. And if they're not ready to harvest, I can come back in a couple of days and get them. So let's go see what we can find. It'd be nice to take a nice walk in the woods. It's been raining. The air is nice and clean and crisp, and it feels great out here. So let's go for a walk. It's going to be a good baynut year. We can also scope for baynuts while out here. You can see the animals have been busy eating them. If you've heard that animals don't eat raw baynuts, that is not true. They definitely do. All of these have been chewed open to get the nuts out. Look at that, that. So the other thing that they eat is the top, usually the top part of the hull here, because this is related to avocado, and when this is really ripe, you can actually eat it, and it's oily and very thin, but not un-avocado-like. A lot of animals do eat the top portion of the skin here because it's very nutritious, full of oil, but they do also eat the nuts, as evidenced by all of these opened husks missing the nuts. This looks like this tree in particular is going to make some really large nuts. Let's see if we can find one this one looks a little small. Oh yeah, that's a big nut. Even so. So some of these nuts on this tree are going to be pretty huge. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about and you're like, what the heck is a baynut? It is a little known North American plant drug that's a stimulant. While it's not really like them, it's best compared to coffee and chocolate. When it's roasted, you have to roast it to eat it. With any luck, I will produce a killer baynut series some year, possibly this year. But you know, this time of year, if I'm out hiking, I'm definitely going to be scoping for trees to come back to. The question is like, am I going to get any of these nuts, or are the squirrels going to eat them all? In a not very good baynut year, the squirrels will just eat all of the nuts and you won't get any, but it's definitely a good year, so I'm going to get to harvest nuts this year. Well, let's head right up here. Oh, you know what? I remember seeing an oyster log over here off to the left. And we're going to be looking at downed tan oak logs mostly. They will also grow on standing tan oak trees if the tree's sick and dying. So around here, the first mushrooms to come up really are, they come out before the rains start, is not turkey tails, damn, what are those things called? Chicken of the woods. I knew it was some kind of bird. Chicken of the woods. I usually miss those because I'm not out mushroom hunting unless I happen to be just out or see one driving by. Okay, so nothing there. Okay, I think we're going to head up here because there's a lot of tan oaks that are down, laying across the ravine, I think. Just kind of want to glance up this ravine. Yeah, most of those look old. Also keep in mind, it could still be too early. It's just nice to get out and get some exercise, breathe some fresh air, the thrill of the hunt. I've also noticed in some years that it doesn't seem like it takes really any significant amount of rain. And I think we did have some sprinkles earlier. So sometimes that can prompt the mushrooms to sprout, even if the logs aren't getting like really soaked. But with the sudden oak death, there's a lot of tan oak trees dying, standing dead, falling over. If not this year, soon, we should have pretty bumper crops of oysters. You could see they marked this here. That's part of a timber harvest plan. I think it means they can cut that tree, whereas like, here's another one. And anywhere you see a blue stripe, that means that's the cut line where they have to stop because it's too close to the creek. Look at all this good tan bark down here. It's like a year too late. This piece looks great. Like if I could carry that home, it's just a long ways home. You know, I could probably tan a deer hide with that piece of bark right there. Look at this, it's just really rich. And look at that, just big slabs just falling off of here. Beautiful, rich red bark. So this is the good stuff, the inner rind, and this outer rind is, you know, not as useful, but this is almost an inch thick, and a lot of it is an inch thick. I have a storage problem for my tan bark at this point. There's so much of it. And I've missed huge quantities closer to home than this. It's hate to see it go to waste though. Now I haven't been up here yet, and I don't want to kind of because it's going to be really depressing. But they did a cut right here, right up to this ridge and down the face a little bit in spots. Then they did hack and squirt. I heard them doing it too. I heard a crew out doing it. You cut with an axe into the tree and you squirt herbicide into the cut and it kills the trees, but it leaves them standing. So some people tried to ban that practice around here and it didn't really work. They just do it anyway. But it creates a huge fire hazard because tan oak is the worst case scenario. It has thick, leathery leaves that burn like gas and they're high fuel value. It's pretty bad practice in terms of forest practice in general. If you're concerned about the health of the forest, all they care about is that they get mostly firs regrowing and not tan oaks. So here's a blue line. That's the cut line, so they can't cut anywhere closer to the creek than that. So a lot of these marks are from old timber harvest plans that didn't go through, but any year, you know, they could decide to cut this and I'll have to live right next to it. And they'll probably do hack and squirt and create like a gigantic fire hazard. And there's really probably nothing I can do about it. I'm not seeing any oyster mushrooms yet. I think we're too early. Maybe not. You know, I may just not have run into any oyster. There we are. Look. Perfect timing. I mean, in terms of like, well, the video, that's pretty good timing. But I mean, in terms of the maturity. So these are perfect. Their edges are still curled in. These are great. And I'll probably try to propagate some of these too. Let me show you about that in a sec here. If anything, these could have even been gotten a little bit earlier. Maybe next year I'll go 1 week after the first rain. So if you cut like the bases off here, I put them in coffee grounds. So I'll collect my coffee grounds, make sure they're well drained so they're not too soppy wet. And then I can them in canning jars, like a hot water bath for, 20, 30 minutes. And then they seal and they're just sitting there. So I can take, cuttings like this, say, open a sterilized thing of coffee grounds, drop one of these in or a few of them and close it back up and let the mycelium take over. This is kind of a pretty color, isn't it? Look at that. Pink rimmed. And hopefully I'll remember that this is here and I can come back. So better to pull them off like this for propagation. So all of this stuff where it's like fuzzy looking and all this base and stuff, that's really good for growing if you were to want to grow them. And I kind of do want to grow this to see if it turns out like this with this cool kind of pink rim on it. I imagine that if I were to get in here and kind of cut this stuff out and use it directly for spawn, that could be pretty good too. In fact, I think I'm gonna try that. In a tree that's this far gone in terms of like being rotten, there's a good chance this tree won't produce next year because it's just kind of spent. The oyster mushrooms are really aggressive and they eat fast and they'll usually fruit for 2 or 3 years and then that's it, at least on this species, tan oak. Cool, man. I'm making tortillas from scratch tonight and I got some venison thawing and now I'm thinking cream of oyster mushroom soup, especially if I find more. Now these freeze okay if you saute them in butter first, but they don't dry well. They taste not very good. If that was the only way I had to preserve them and I was like using them in soups and stews for flavor, I'd probably do it. Are they good? No. But now we know they're out. So that means if I put in the time and I cover a lot of ground the next 3 days, I can probably harvest a bunch of these and get some into the freezer, sauteed in chicken broth and butter, and then put them in little canning jars, dump them straight frozen into spaghetti soup. Clean those lungs out. Okay, I know there's some dead tan oaks that are fresher right over here. Now, I'm back on the homestead property now. That's an old redwood fence post. Yeah, this is what I had in mind right here. This could definitely grow some oyster mushrooms for the next couple of years. If they happen to get a foothold, there's a lot of other aggressive mushrooms that compete with oysters here. The main one is this one right here. False turkey tail, I think it's called. It's an orange turkey tail looking fungus. It gets a lot more logs than oyster does. You know, faster at colonizing, makes more spores. I mean, who knows why. And another one is charcoal fungus. Even turkey tail gets more real estate than oyster mushroom does here. Now I'm getting hungry. Starting to drool thinking about these fried up in butter. I thought about building a camp right here. Just a little place to like do videos and get away. It's like a nice flat bench. It's well drained. It's basically gravel. There's a natural gravel deposit here. It'd be really easy to flatten this off. It's private. It's a little shaded, but I could clear off some of this. These trees would be handy for putting up holes for different stuff. It's a pretty neat little spot, but it doesn't get a lot of sun. More like a summer camp. Also, the mosquitoes shouldn't be horrible up here, especially if it's cleared out more. They're not going to be good either. Hey, let's check out these bay trees and see if there's any nuts. So there's a hole. There's another hole. More holes. So all of this is from animals eating the nuts. It's probably all squirrels. The squirrels will start off on them when they're remotely edible, have any nutrition at all, they'll start eating them. So they've already been here working away for a while. Now the main drop is usually around Thanksgiving. You know, it's obviously very soon. It's not always, and sometimes it'll take a storm to really knock them down. Because all I'm seeing here is nuts that are taken out of the tree by the squirrels and dropped. I'm not seeing anything that's just falling out of the tree. This is a spot where a lot of water comes out of the hillside and it's caused the ground to slump like this. I always thought it'd be cool to do like a miniature amphitheater right here, like sit here and play music and have like a little audience, you know, chop some seats into the hillside there, but it's very unstable. Oh, how's this bark? Because I need to stock up on black oak bark. I just smoked some meat with it, some wild boar bacon and ham and stuff. It's so good. Definitely my new favorite smoking material is black oak bark. It burns like a charcoal briquette. It tastes great. It has a low tendency to flare if you do it right. And it's, oh, here we go. This is what I need right here. This is solid. I'm gonna stock up. Amazing stuff. Watch my video on oak bark. Piece of bush wisdom that almost nobody knows. Damn, this is the mother lode here. I could have got it 1 year earlier, but as long as it's not wet and it's still heavy, it's good. I think I'll do that today. 100% chance of rain tomorrow. I'm gonna go put this basket down, make a couple trips up here, get me a bunch of that oak bark, and then I'm gonna cook some amazing food and I'm gonna eat it into my face. There's a seedling apple up by the spring. It's doing really good. I actually grafted this to chestnut crab and it would never really grow well, and it kept growing suckers, so I finally cut it down and it grew back this much in 1 year. So it grew, it's taller than me, so 6 feet. Probably gonna be another at least 3 years before that fruits. So I'm heading back for some oak bark. But I keep my priorities straight here. That's our native scorpion right here. See, there's a baby with it, look. They're not very aggressive. You can see like it really doesn't even want to sting. They're kind of a bluish color. It's really a neat color. It's like a steel blue green. Anyway, I call those bark scorpions because I like to live in bark. Okay, now here we go. I like this. This is what I want up here. This stuff feels less rotten maybe. This stuff here is less protected because like the tree leans this way. So you can see all this stuff got really wet and the stuff on this side stayed pretty dry. So I want to knock that piece down right there. So my stupid idea is if I throw a heavy piece of bark up high enough and it lands in that crevice, it'll get stuck. I really want that piece of bark, if you can't tell. There we go. Don't break. Whew, didn't break. If I can make a tidy package out of this, it would be pretty easy to carry. I'm not far from home, but I'm not close either. It's a good supply of oak bark for the winter. Okay, that was a little heavy.